In the early hours of June 7, 2026, the Chonhar Bridge, a key route linking Crimea with Russian-controlled southern Ukraine, came under a Ukrainian drone attack. At first glance, this may seem like just another bridge strike in a war that has already lasted for years. But Chonhar is not an ordinary bridge. It is one of the main routes that can carry fuel, ammunition, spare parts, and military vehicles from Crimea to Russian forces fighting on the southern front. What made this attack more significant was its timing. According to Ukraine, Russia's 37th Motorized Rifle Brigade was waiting for a fuel convoy from Crimea. If that claim is accurate, the bridge was no longer just a piece of infrastructure. It was the route that the convoy needed to keep an entire brigade operating. This was not simply another drone strike. It was a layered operation that reportedly combined cyber intelligence, deception, electronic warfare, and a new attack drone to create a brief opening in Russia's defensive network. But if this operation had really been prepared days in advance, then the most important question is not what type of drone Ukraine used. Was this only an attack on a bridge, or had Ukraine already discovered that a Russian brigade depended on this exact route to receive its fuel? And if the real target was not the bridge itself, but the supply line moving across it, then this operation may have begun long before the first drone ever took off. Let's take a closer look with military force. The Chonhar Bridge became important because Ukraine appeared to know what Russia needed before the convoy arrived. According to the Ukrainian account, the 37th Motorized Rifle Brigade was waiting for fuel coming from Crimea, and its reserves had already fallen to a dangerous level. That detail changes the meaning of the strike. This was not only about damaging a bridge, it was about hitting the route at the exact moment when that route mattered most. In any army, fuel is not just another supply item. It decides how fast units can move, how long vehicles can operate, and how quickly commanders can react when the front line changes. A tank without fuel becomes a heavy metal box. A truck without fuel cannot bring ammunition forward. A mobile air defense system that cannot move becomes easier to track. Even drones, repair crews, and command vehicles depend on the same fuel chain behind the battlefield. That is why Chonhar was not just concrete and asphalt. It was a narrow point in Russia's southern supply system, and narrow points are where small strikes can create wide consequences. If fuel trucks had to move from Crimea toward Russian units in occupied southern Ukraine, Chonhar was one of the routes that could keep that movement fast and direct. But when a direct route becomes unusable, the whole schedule begins to bend. Ukraine could have waited for the tanker trucks to appear on the road and then tried to destroy them one by one. That could create explosions, but it might also allow some vehicles to escape, turn back, or scatter. Instead, Ukraine chose a more strategic option. It went after the bottleneck itself. A bottleneck is dangerous because many movements depend on one point. If that point fails, the problem spreads outward. Convoys must stop. Officers must find another route. Escort units must be reassigned. Fuel is burned just to solve the fuel problem. What looks like one damaged bridge can become delays across an entire rear area. This is where the strike becomes more than a drone attack. It shows how Ukraine is trying to connect cyber intelligence, logistical tracking, and long-range strike capability into one battlefield chain. First, identify what Russia needs. Then identify where that need must pass. Finally, hit the place where one strike can create the largest disruption. For Russian commanders, the problem would not be limited to one convoy. A delay at Chonhar could affect planning, movement orders, and the timing of units waiting farther north. Once Ukraine understood where Russian fuel had to pass, the next step was not to wait for the convoy. It was to send a weapon accurate enough to hit the choke point itself. Once the target had been chosen, Ukraine still faced a difficult question. Damaging an important bridge was one thing. Reaching it through layers of Russian air defenses was something very different. According to the described operation, Ukraine answered that challenge by making the Behemoth drone the main strike platform. Unlike a standard FPV drone that is usually designed to attack vehicles, trenches, or small defensive positions near the front line, Behemoth was presented as a much larger attack drone built for a different type of mission. It reportedly carried a significantly heavier explosive payload, making it more suitable for infrastructure targets. The reported design reflected a different way of thinking about drone warfare. Instead of focusing only on speed, Behemoth was built to survive the approach long enough to reach its objective. In modern air defense, reaching the target is often more difficult than destroying it. According to available descriptions, Behemoth approached the bridge at an extremely low altitude while flying across open water. Flying close to the surface does not make an aircraft invisible, but it can make radar tracking more difficult under certain conditions. Radar systems must filter reflections from waves, terrain, buildings, and other objects. A slow-moving aircraft close to the surface may become harder to separate from background returns, especially if operators are watching several threats at the same time. That does not mean low altitude guarantees success. Russian forces have destroyed many Ukrainian drones, but reducing detection range by even a short distance can create valuable seconds for an attacking aircraft. In a bridge strike, a few seconds can be the difference between interception and impact. Another reported feature of Behemoth was its navigation method. Instead of depending on continuous manual control throughout the flight, the drone was described as following a planned route while relying more heavily on satellite navigation. If accurate, that approach could reduce the amount of radio communication between the operator and the aircraft during the most dangerous stage of the mission. Every radio transmission can create an opportunity for electronic warfare units to detect, locate, or interfere with a drone. Reducing those transmissions may lower the risk, although it cannot remove it completely. This is why the drone's value was not only in the explosive it carried. Its value also came from how quietly it could move through a defended area before the final strike. For a mission near a guarded crossing, silence can be as important as speed. The less a drone announces itself, the less time the defense has to understand what is coming. The reported warhead configuration suggests that the mission focused on structural damage rather than surface destruction alone. According to the description, Behemoth carried two separate explosive effects. The first was intended to break open part of the target, while the second was designed to deliver deeper internal damage through the same point of impact. Whether every technical detail can be independently confirmed or not, the operational logic is clear. Military planners often try to attack the weakest point of a structure instead of using larger amounts of explosives against its strongest surfaces. This approach reflects a wider change on today's battlefield. Success is no longer determined only by larger missiles or heavier bombs. Precision, timing, and planning allow relatively inexpensive unmanned systems to threaten targets that once required far more expensive weapons. For Ukraine, the reported value of Behemoth was the combination of affordability, low flight, reduced radioactivity, and the ability to strike a carefully selected weak point. Those characteristics made it suitable for a mission where success depended as much on reaching the bridge as on damaging it. But Behemoth was never expected to complete that journey alone. To give a quiet attacking drone the best chance of reaching the bridge, Ukraine still needed another aircraft that would attract Russian attention in the opposite direction. FP-2 became important because it may have given Russian defenses something obvious to chase. In the described operation, FP-2 flew near the same attack route as Behemoth, but its mission was different. Behemoth was intended to be the main strike platform. FP-2 was designed to become the visible problem. According to the reported scenario, it transmitted a stronger radio control signal, making it easier for Russian electronic warfare systems to detect and monitor. That signal was not necessarily a weakness. It may have been part of the plan from the very beginning. In electronic warfare, every radio transmission leaves information behind. A drone communicating with its operator can provide direction, signal strength, and movement data. Modern electronic warfare systems do not always need to destroy a drone immediately. Their first objective is often to detect it, identify it, and understand where it is moving. If FP-2 continued transmitting while approaching the bridge, Russian operators would naturally have more information to work with. During a fast-moving attack, commanders often have only a short time to decide which contact represents the greatest danger. A target producing a clear signal can quickly become the center of attention because it appears easier to identify than quieter objects operating in the same area. This is where the value of a decoy becomes clear. A decoy is not expected to complete the mission. Its purpose is to influence the defender's decisions. If Russian radar operators, electronic warfare crews, or air defense units concentrated on FP2, then the drone had already begun performing its role. This reflects a common principle in asymmetric warfare. A relatively inexpensive platform can force a much more expensive defense network to spend time, attention, and resources against the wrong target. The goal is not simply to survive. The goal is to shape the enemy's response. The psychological pressure is equally important. Once defenders detect an approaching aircraft near an important bridge, they cannot safely ignore it. Delaying action risks allowing a strike to succeed. Reacting too quickly risks committing valuable defensive assets before the real threat has appeared. For the defender, this is a difficult balance. Every second spent checking one contact can leave another contact less watched. In a night strike, that delay can matter. For Ukraine, this approach could create an opportunity without destroying every Russian defensive system. Instead of defeating the entire air defense network, the operation could encourage that network to focus on the most visible signal, while another aircraft continued toward the bridge with far less attention. The strength of FP2 was not that it carried the largest warhead or possessed the most advanced technology. Its strength came from performing a different task inside the same operation. One drone created activity, the other preserved surprise. Together, they increased the complexity facing Russian defenders during the most critical moments of the attack. If this interpretation is correct, FP2 did not fail because it attracted Russian attention. Attracting that attention may have been its primary mission from the beginning. In operations based on deception, success is sometimes measured not by which aircraft survives, but by whether the enemy reacts exactly as planned. This is why the decoy role can be so valuable. It turns the enemy's sensors into part of the trap, because the defense begins to trust the signal it can see most clearly. From the moment FP2 began transmitting, the operation was no longer only about drones approaching a bridge. It became a contest between electronic signals, radar detection, and the decisions Russian air defense crews would make under growing pressure. Russian defenses around Chonhar may have been strong, but strength does not always prevent deception. Around a key crossing, Russia would likely rely on several defensive layers. One layer listens for radio signals. Another tries to jam control links and navigation. A final layer uses air defense weapons to destroy the target before impact. In theory, this kind of network should make a bridge harder to attack. In practice, it still depends on one fragile thing: correct judgment under pressure. According to the described operation, Repellent 1 played the listening role. Its purpose was not to shoot down the drone. It was to detect the radio signal, identify the direction, and help locate where the aircraft or its operator might be. This matters because electronic warfare often begins before any missile is fired. The first battle is not over the target itself. It is over information. Jetel was described as the next layer. Its job was to interfere with the drone's control link and make the signal harder to use. If a drone depends on an operator, heavy jamming can break the video feed, delay commands, or force the aircraft into a less flexible flight mode. For defenders, this can create a chance to slow the attack and expose the drone to other weapons. Then comes Pantsir S1, the final shield. Pantsir is designed to defend important positions against aircraft, missiles, and drones at shorter ranges. It combines radar, missiles, and rapid-fire cannons, which makes it dangerous when the target is already detected. But even a capable system needs the right target at the right time. This is where FP2 may have changed the battle. By transmitting more clearly, it gave Russian systems a large amount of information. The signal could be tracked, the direction could be measured. The threat could be passed along the defensive chain. From the Russian side, this may have looked like success. Their electronic warfare systems were hearing something, their crews had a contact to follow, and their air defense had a target to engage. But that was also the trap. The problem was not that Russian defenses saw nothing. The problem was that they may have seen the most visible part of the attack and treated it as the most important part. In modern warfare, more data does not always mean better understanding. A loud signal can create confidence, and confidence can lead crews to act before they have the full picture. If Panzer S-1 focused on FP2, then time and attention were pulled away from the quieter threat. Every second spent tracking the decoy was a second not spent searching for another aircraft. Every burst of fire or launch decision against FP2 helped confirm that the defense had chosen its priority. The decoy did not have to destroy anything. It only had to make the defense commit. This is the danger of layered defense against a layered attack. Sensors, jammers, and air defense weapons can protect a bridge, but they can also be manipulated if the attacker understands how those systems react. Ukraine did not need Russia to be blind. It only needed Russia to look at the wrong object during the decisive window. So the mistake was not simply failure to detect. It was a failure to rank the threat correctly. When Russian defenses focused on the loudest target, a tactical opening appeared for the drone that was harder to see and more dangerous to ignore. Behemoth's most important advantage may have been that it gave Russian defenses very little to follow. While FP2 drew attention, Behemoth continued toward Chonhar with a much quieter profile. In the described operation, it did not create the same clear radio trail as the decoy. That mattered because Russian systems could not easily focus on a signal that was not openly announcing itself. The main weapon was not trying to overpower the defense. It was trying to pass through before the defense fully understood where the real danger was. The low flight path also helped shape the attack. Flying close to the water can reduce the time available for radar crews and short-range air defense teams to react. It does not make a drone impossible to detect, but it can shorten the warning window. Against a fixed target like a bridge, even a small reduction in warning time can be enough to change the outcome. This is why the operation did not require Ukraine to destroy every Russian defensive layer around Chonhar. A full air defense network can be expensive, complex, and dangerous, but it still needs time to process targets, rank threats, and decide what to shoot first. If that process is disrupted for only a few minutes, a quiet drone can move through a gap that was never meant to stay open for long. The contrast between the two UAVs created the key tactical effect. FP2 made the noise. Behemoth kept the silence. One aircraft gave Russian crews something to track, while the other tried to stay outside the center of their attention. In that sense, the strike was not only about technology, it was about forcing the defender to solve the wrong problem first. For Russian air defense, this kind of attack creates a dangerous delay. Crews may detect, jam, or fire at the decoy, but each action takes time. Each action also narrows their focus. By the time they realize another aircraft may be approaching, the main drone may already be deep inside the defended zone. That is the power of a silent approach. It does not need to defeat the whole system. It only needs to survive the final stretch. The moment of danger is short, but it is decisive. Once a drone reaches that distance, even advanced defenses have little room for error. For Ukraine, those seconds could carry more value than a larger explosion. They allowed the main drone to arrive while the defense was still reacting to the wrong threat. Behemoth's role, as described, was to use that short opening with maximum effect. It moved while attention was elsewhere, kept its signal exposure low, and followed a route designed to reduce early warning. The operation turned Russian defenses into a slower reaction system because they had to process the decoy before they could understand the real strike. The remaining question was whether Behemoth could turn those few quiet minutes into real damage on the bridge itself. The real effect of the strike was not measured only by whether the Chonhar bridge collapsed. According to the described operation, Behemoth was aimed at a weak point in the bridge span, not just the road surface above it. That distinction matters. A surface hit can leave a visible crater, but deeper structural damage can create a different problem. Engineers may need time to inspect the load-bearing sections before allowing heavy military traffic to cross again. The reported warhead design also fits that logic. If the first explosive effect opened part of the structure and the second pushed damage deeper inside, the purpose was not simply to leave a mark on the pavement. It was to make the bridge uncertain. For military logistics, uncertainty can be enough. A commander cannot safely send fuel trucks or heavy vehicles across a bridge if the structure may not hold under repeated weight. That is why a bridge can still stand and still lose military value. It may remain visible from the shoreline, but if traffic must stop, slow down, or wait for inspection, the route has already been disrupted. The wider consequence was the rerouting of Russian movement through Armyansk. That alternative route reportedly added about 130 kilometers to the trip. On a map, that may look like a detour. On a battlefield, it means more exposure. Road gives Ukrainian drones more time to search, track, and strike. It also forces Russian convoys to spend more fuel, assign more escorts, and move through areas where ambush risk may be higher. For a fuel convoy, this is a serious problem. The cargo is valuable, flammable, and urgently needed. The longer it remains on the road, the more chances Ukraine has to find it. Even if the convoy survives, it may arrive late, with fewer vehicles, under heavier protection, and after burning resources just to complete the route. This is the strategic meaning of Chonhar. The strike did not have to erase the bridge from the map. It only had to interrupt the confidence that Russian logistics depended on. Once a direct crossing becomes questionable, the burden shifts onto the entire supply chain. So the impact of Chonhar should not be judged only by whether the bridge fully collapsed. The better question is whether Russian fuel trucks could still cross it safely, quickly, and on time. Chonhar shows how Ukraine is using drones as part of a wider campaign system, not only as single strike weapons. The reported sequence was clear. Intelligence helped identify the weak moment. FP2 may have pulled Russian defenses toward the wrong target. Behemoth then struck at the route Russia needed to keep fuel moving. The bridge did not need to fall into the water to matter. If a convoy must wait, turn back, or take a longer road, the front line can feel the delay. That is the larger lesson from Chonhar. In modern war, controlling a bridge is not enough. An army must be able to use it safely, quickly, and repeatedly. If you found this analysis useful, subscribe to Military Force for more in-depth reports on today's most important military and geopolitical events. Every battlefield teaches us not only how wars are fought, but also how fragile peace can become when diplomacy fails. Thank you for watching, stay informed, and never stop learning from history in the hope that future generations will face fewer wars, not more.